The right goals are the ones that matter to you. Hello, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for joining me today. Today, I'm going to give you 3 questions to ask yourself when you are trying to determine if a goal that you have set or are thinking about setting is the right goal for you. And I titled this video, The Right Goal for You, but in reality, there's no right or wrong when it comes to goal setting, because the most important thing to remember is that this is your life. These are your goals, and the right goal for you is the one that matters the most to you, the one that's actually going to change your individual life in a positive way. So today I'm going to give you 3 questions, 3 topics, things to think about as you are working through figuring out what you want your goals to be. And if you're like we're halfway through February, I've already set my goals for the year, how is this going to help me? I get it. We are a month and a half into a brand new year, and you probably set new goals for 2022. That does not mean that you can't change your mind. It doesn't mean that you can't, on a monthly refresh or a quarterly refresh or tomorrow, look down at your annual goals and say, that goal actually doesn't matter to me as much as I thought it did, and cross it off. Or there's a goal that I've been thinking about that I was kind of scared or didn't actually put down on my 2022 list that really does matter to me, that I want to start making progress on. We still have so much time left this year to make progress on our goals and change things about our lives, and you have the permission to change your mind at any time. A couple of weeks ago, I posted a video all about getting started with goals. And one of the steps to getting started is figuring out what your goals are. And in that video, I gave lots of ideas and examples on how to figure out what you want your goals to be. So if you don't even have an idea, I would start with that video and use some of those ideas to figure out what you want your goals to be. This video is, I already have the ideas, I've either written them down or want to write them down. How do I know if it is the right idea for me? How do I know if this goal is something I may or may not want to actually accomplish? The first question is, where did this idea come from? Where did the goal idea stem from? And it doesn't mean that if it came from, social media or somebody in your life that it's a bad idea, but just a couple of things to think about when you're looking at that goal idea and thinking about, where did I get that idea? If the idea came from the internet, you saw somebody else doing that goal, think about if that is something that you really truly want to be a part of your life. That is one of the hardest things about the fact that we can see everybody's life on the internet. A reminder that the life that you're seeing on the internet is the curated small pieces that they are choosing to share with you. It is not their entire life. It is not every support system, every resource, everything that they have in the background. So keep that in mind. But when you pick a goal just because you saw somebody else achieving it, take a second and really think if that is something that you truly want to accomplish and you are just inspired by them. Or can you take a moment, be happy for them that they found a goal that works for them and they're seeing progress, making progress on it, but that might not necessarily be the goal for you. The same thing goes when a goal idea comes from somebody else in your life. Did somebody, even a loved one, somebody that you cherish and you value their opinion, did they suggest that this was a goal, a path that you should go down? If that's the case, again, take a second and really think, is this something that I want? And this is something I know that I struggled with when I was younger. I went down paths, like career paths, because somebody else in my life suggested that it would be a good idea for me. Doesn't mean that they were right or they were wrong or they didn't have my best interest at heart, but when I truly think about what I like, what I want to do, is that the goal for me? Turns out in some cases it absolutely wasn't, and I don't necessarily regret going down that path and changing my mind. But now that I know myself better, and only you know your life and your desires and your dreams, is that something that I really wanted to work on? Is that something that I really want to accomplish and make a goal? And again, the answer still might be yes. And maybe that person just sees something that you don't see in yourself. I mean, in all honesty, Sam has been telling me to be an entrepreneur for years and years before I finally saw it myself. But there are times that somebody in our lives can make a suggestion or a recommendation that turns out is not actually a goal that we want to work on. Did the idea come from something that you want to improve about your life? I find this to be a really good source of goal ideas for me personally. When I'm going about my day to day and I hit a snag, or something is hard or is taking me a long time, or something I don't like doing that I would like to cut out or take less time, I really think, how could I make this into a goal? How could I change this in my life so that it is smoother or makes me happier or is something that just makes my life easier? I find that when I go about my day, I really get bombarded with goal ideas of things that I'd like to do or change. So if the idea came from that, you going about your life and wanting to change something or wanting to improve something, I find that that's a really good resource for goal ideas that do end up really making a difference in my life and ones that really matter to me. Did the idea come from something that you used to do? A lot of times we will set goals because I used to do that. I used to read this many books. I used to fit into this size of clothing. I used to make this much money at work. I used to cook this many meals at home. Whatever that used to was. And sometimes those things that I used to do that we want to bring back into our lives are a great idea for a goal. This is one of those questions that it could really go either way. Sometimes it's a good indication of something that you miss, something that you want to have more of, something that you want to spend more time doing. For me, that thing is dance. I, for the longest time, put dance into the category of something that I used to do, but I just want to do it because I used to do it, not because it still brings me the same amount of joy. Well, turns out I was wrong. When I finally got the courage to go back to dance, I was reminded at how much joy it brought me. But there are also those goals that we want to achieve because we used to do that. And it may not bring the same amount of joy or relaxation or happiness that it brought us back when we used to do it. And so when you look at this goal idea, is it on that list because it's something that you used to do? And if that is not a season of life that you're in anymore, or not something that's going to bring you the same amount of joy or happiness that it did back then, maybe it doesn't need to be on your list. In the same vein, did this idea come from because it's something that I've always done? That is one of my pet peeves from working in a corporate job, is every time that I would have a new idea or somebody on my team would have a new idea and somebody above us would say, but this is the way that we've always done it. Does that mean it's the way we always need to do it? Sometimes we set goals or create systems or don't set goals because that's the way that we've always done it. And that can be a good place to really look at the goal and maybe consider trying something different and setting a goal around that. Truthfully, a lot of goal setting, especially action items, especially goals that you've never done before, it's a lot of trial and error, trying to see if this works in my life. Does this help me get to where I want to be? For me, this was using a budgeting software system. I am a math nerd. I was a math major. I love Excel. I love spreadsheets. I make spreadsheets for everything, including a very robust multi-tab budget spreadsheet that I really honed and developed for almost 10 years. And I was very, very proud of it. And it worked really, really well when it was just me. And it was me and my finances, my expenses, and my personal financial goals. First getting out of debt and then savings and just me and my life. Then I brought in another person and I tried to expand my spreadsheet to incorporate 2 incomes, 2 sets of expenses, multiple bank accounts, all of those things, especially somebody whose income fluctuates. And it worked for a little bit, but it was very difficult. And importing all of those expenses now for 2 people was a lot more work. And on one hand, I liked the manual entry of expenses. It really made me look at each one individually, but it was also making me spend way less time in that spreadsheet because I was just overwhelmed and it was not working anymore. So I finally decided, just because that's the way I've always done it, it doesn't have to be a goal for me anymore to use a spreadsheet that I've created, and let me try a virtual budgeting software, especially now that we are going into a place where both of our incomes are fluctuating. And I've transitioned and it has been working so much better for me, and I just had to let go of, this is a thing that I'm doing because this is the way I've always done it. So just a couple of things to think about, asking yourself, where did this goal idea come from? Did it really come from me? Or if it didn't, is it something that I do really want to work on? The next question is, what do I want the impact to be? And this question may not necessarily change your mind on whether this is a goal that you work on or don't work on, but it can add a lot of clarity on what you want this goal to look like. Because there are a lot of goals that are very similar, but depending on our lives and our needs, they might look different from person to person. In fact, they will look very different. This is an exercise that I always do at the beginning with my one-on-one clients because I know that there are things that they're not necessarily thinking about when they say, this is the goal that I want to work on. So I will ask them how they want this goal to impact in 3 different areas of life. The first one is, how do I want it to impact my day-to-day life? Now, I do want to tell you that if a goal does not impact your day-to-day, like if you say this is not going to impact my day-to-day life, that's fine. It doesn't mean that it's a bad goal and it's not a goal that you should work on. Not every goal that we work on is going to change our day-to-day life in a good way or a bad way. But when you ask yourself, how will this goal impact my day-to-day life, or how do I want it to impact my day-to-day life, you can really find whether this is a goal for you. A couple of weeks ago, I gave an example about reading, And I broke down all the numbers, sharing that a goal to read 52 books in a year equates to about an hour a day of reading on average, depending again on how long the book is and how fast you read. But based on averages, that's what it comes out to. So if you set a goal to read 52 books in a year and therefore need to read about an hour a day, and let's say your evenings are completely packed by the time you get home from work, make dinner, help the kids get in bed, all of those things, there's no time for reading in the evenings. So the only time that you're gonna be able to fit reading into your schedule is by getting up earlier in the morning. But what if you're not a morning person and getting up an hour early every day, especially on the weekdays, sounds awful to you? But that is how that goal would impact your day-to-day. Maybe that's not the goal for you. There are a lot of goals that can sound perfect or great, or think like reading 52 books a year or working out for an hour a day. But when you really ask yourself, how do I want this goal to impact my day-to-day life? But if the answer is something that either doesn't make you happy or excited or doesn't feel like it's going to fit with your ideal day scenario, then I would not recommend that being a goal for you. The next impact question is, how will this goal impact my life in 5 to 10 years? Same thing as the day-to-day. If the answer is it might not impact my life in 5 to 10 years, that does not mean that it's a bad goal. In fact, sometimes we don't think it will impact our life in 5 to 10 years and we just can't see that yet. And sometimes it just might not. One of my annual goals for 2022 is to create and execute on a New York City bucket list. I don't know if that goal will really have an impact on my life in 5 to 10 years. Like, New York City is not going anywhere. I can always come back and do some of those bucket list items, but for whatever reason, I feel the need to do them right now this year. And that's okay. Just because that goal is not going to impact my life in 5 to 10 years doesn't necessarily make it a bad goal. But if you think about how this goal will change your life in a positive way, it can usually add clarity on if this goal is really important to you. But maybe when you ask yourself that question, that goal has a really exciting answer. There is something that will be impacted in your life in 5 to 10 years if you work on this goal right now. And that might just add some clarity and confidence that you know that this is the right goal for you. Again, if the answer is no, it doesn't have to mean that this goal is wrong, but it might make you think, is this goal something I really need to or want to focus on right now? For me, I decided the answer for the New York City bucket list goal was yes, because I have the time now that I work for myself, and we are going to leave New York City, and those things will be harder to do once I no longer live here. And for some of them, once I'm a little bit older, my life stage is a little bit different. But I have had goals before where I've asked myself, will this impact my life in 5 to 10 years? And had the answer be, not really, and decided that's not a goal I want to focus on right now. The last impact related topic I want you to think about is, how will this impact my loved ones? And when I say loved ones, I mean that immediate circle, that close circle of friends and family that you really cherish. How will this goal impact them? And when you ask yourself that, it usually helps add clarity on what you want this goal to look like, right? Maybe you're thinking about a work-related goal. I want to get a promotion. I want to achieve this thing at work. And then when you really start to think about it and realize what that impact will be on your loved ones, you might decide that that's not something that you want to achieve anymore. The best example I have for this is actually my own mom. My mom is amazing. First off, she's like the most amazing person in the whole wide world. She picked us up and we moved to an entirely different state because she wanted to get promoted at work, and that was important to her. And the company told her that wouldn't happen in the city that we lived in. So we picked up, we moved to a bigger city. After being in that city for a little bit, my mom realized that if she continued to go after that promotion, while it would mean lots of positive things, both for her and her life, as well as for us, her children, her family, in terms of like vacations and all kinds of perks related to a promotion, it would also mean that she would spend way less time with us. And she would potentially not be able to go to some of our school events. And she would not be able to be there for school dances to take photos. And she made the really tough decision. I feel like this example's making me get emotional. She made a really tough decision to decide that that promotion was no longer a goal she wanted to go after. Now, she didn't completely quit her job. She kept working, right? But she decided that where she was working, the balance of being able to support her family financially, but also be able to spend time was the perfect balance for her. And that goal of getting promoted was no longer there anymore. So just a question to think about, how will this impact my loved ones? Is this something that I still want to work on? And the last question is one that you've probably heard before, but that is to ask yourself simply, why is this goal important to you? But what I want to encourage you to do now, in case you've never heard me talk about this before, is to dig a little deeper. You gotta dig a little deeper. So the way that I explain this exercise is, imagine that you're sitting here with a little toddler. If you've ever been around a toddler, you know that they like to ask a lot of questions. They're very inquisitive. They're in the stage of learning and figuring out the world around them. And so oftentimes when they ask you a question and you give them an answer, they will go, but why? And then you give them an answer that you feel is pretty satisfactory, and they're not satisfied, and they go, but why? And you do this for what feels like forever until they get distracted by a TV show or another toy. But the key here is to continually ask yourself, but why, but why, but why, until you get to a why that is not only specific to you, but something that really means something to you, something that really matters. My best example of this is Plan with Laken. It is embarrassing to admit this, but when I first started Plan with Laken on Instagram, not YouTube, on Instagram, if you were to ask me why I started that Instagram, I would tell you it was to get free stuff. Yep. I started an Instagram because everybody else was, and they were getting sent products from companies, and I was like, well, if I start sharing stuff on Instagram, companies will also send me products. But 8 years ago, wow, 8 years, yeah. That's why I started an Instagram, was because I wanted someone to send me free stuff to use in my planner, stickers, pens, whatever. Obviously that developed over time, and my why continued to change until eventually I got to the goal of wanting to work for myself. But when I asked myself why I wanted to work for myself, the first answer I probably would give you is flexibility, like being able to be in control of my schedule. Great, that's a great answer. That can be a good motivator depending on the day. But why is that flexibility important to me? Well, that way when we do start a family, I have the flexibility to go be there with my kids and be able to potentially be a room mom, help with whatever, be able to have the flexibility in my schedule to do activities with my kids during the day. That was the why that was really important to me. Now, there's a lot of steps in between that. I have worked a long time over the years to ask myself why it's important to me to really get to that root cause. But what's important for you to remember and for you to take away here, two things. Number one is it might take lots of but whys. You might have to ask yourself over and over again. And that why can change over time. Your why right now that you might discover for a goal might be really perfect for you right now, and it might be incredibly motivating. In 6 months, that might not be true anymore, and that why might not be important to you. And to bring it all back to the point of this video is if you go through this exercise and ask yourself, but why, but why, but why, and you are having trouble getting to a reason other than because I should, or because I'm an adult, or because I've always done it, like we talked about before, if you are struggling to get to a why that is specific to you and really makes you excited, even if it's so far off. Like for me, we're a long way from me having, kids that I'm gonna chaperone a field trip for. But finding a why, even if it's far away, that's important to you, means that that goal is something that is right for you, something that matters to you. If you're struggling to find that why, maybe this goal isn't right for you right now. Maybe you revisit it in 6 months and see if that why has changed and if it's a goal that you want to pick up in a year, 5 years, whenever it is. I think that we do a really good job of talking about the why behind our goals at the beginning of the year when we're picking goals, but we are not as good about talking about the why as we go on throughout the year. In fact, in the Patreon goal setting session for February, I included talking about whys in the monthly goal setting session. Now, we didn't spend the whole hour talking about why is every single one of your goals important to you and if it's the same, but I encouraged them to think about their top goal for 2022 and revisit why that goal was important to them. Because while January is only 1 month, it's also a very long month, and a lot of things can change, and maybe that goal that they set in the middle of December is not as important to them. Or maybe there's a new goal that they want to think about, but just checking in on a regular basis with why that goal is important to us, and then do we want to keep that goal on our list of priorities and spending our precious, valuable time on something that doesn't have a good why behind it? All right, those are my thoughts on figuring out if a goal is something that you really want to work on, if it's important to you, if it matters to you. I hope that you found this helpful, and if you're walking away with like, oh my gosh, I need to change my 2022 goals, you still have so much time to make progress. You can absolutely change whatever you need to change and still have a really positive, successful, progress-filled 2022. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're new here, please click that subscribe button. I upload new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday focused on helping you achieve your goals. Thank you so much for watching. Wrong. For me, this was usually, that was wrong. That sounds weird. Master impact? What?